That night, I was at our usual bar, low yellow lights music, humming in the background, ice clicking against glass like a quiet metronome. The kind of sound you only notice when everything else goes silent. Sophie wore my hoodie, the grey one she always borrowed, sleeves covering her hands, hair tucked behind one ear like she was trying to look harmless, like a storm could dress itself up as a drizzle and fool the whole room. 6 friends around the table. Ryan too loud, Clara already tipsy, Ethan making a bad joke about the fries. Liam scrolling his phone like a lifeline. And me smiling because that's what you do right before the ground moves. She tapped her spoon against her glass, a small sound, but somehow it cut through the music, through the laughter, through me. I guess. And this is as good a time as any, she said, breath, steady eyes on me like we were the only 2 people left. I cheated. The words didn't explode. They landed. They sat between us like an object I should pick up, examine, accept. No one breathed. I didn't. The room hung for a moment like a picture frame that wasn't screwed in properly, like it might fall or it might hold. Sophie tilted her head, a half smile, a half smirk, the face you make when you've rehearsed a line and you're dying to deliver it. Honestly, I needed a real man, not some tech support guy who spends his weekends trying to start a car that doesn't even run. Laughter. Quick, shallow, cheap. Ryan lifted his glass like a judge with a stamp. Savage, but honest, I respect it. Clara winced, then tried to smile. Ethan stared at his fries like they had answers. Liam gave me that look, the one that says don't make a scene. Just leave. I finished my drink. Ice against my teeth. Put the glass down, looked at Sophie, really looked, and behind the smile I saw it. The empty room where empathy should live. I tossed my keys up, caught them in my palm. Cool, I said, and I stood, and I walked. And their laughter followed me to the door, like glittering shards of a broken thing. Outside, the wind was clean. The rain from earlier still clung to the pavement. I put my hands in my pockets and kept moving. I thought I lost my girlfriend that night. Turns out, I left behind a circle that wasn't worth keeping. I met Sophie in a coffee shop near campus. She was reading the bell jar black nail polish chipped at the edges, a silver ring on her thumb that had seen better days. I asked about the book. She said, only depressed people read this in public, then smiled, and the smile felt like some kind of dare. We clicked the way stubborn magnets do. Late drives with windows half down, radio, low the city, half asleep. She'd rest her head on my shoulder and say, "You're my peace," like it was just a fact of nature. I believed her because I wanted to, because the right sentence said at the right time can rearrange the furniture in your chest. Back then, when I worked late shifts in tech support, she'd bring me lunch, tap the break room door with her knuckles, hold up a sandwich like an apology for the day. In my garage, the old '92 Civic slept like a cat. Sophie sat on the toolbox, legs crossed, handing me wrenches, playing music I would never find on my own. We weren't rich, we weren't glossy, but we were a kind of enough that felt like it could last. If the world would just mind its business. It didn't. It never does. Girls' nights started. Don't wait up. I'm staying at Clara's. We can talk in the morning. The dots appeared. The replies didn't. She stopped coming to the garage. Dust settled on the Civic. The playlist stopped updating. Silence is soft at first. Then it grows edges. One evening she said, "You always chase things that take too long." She wasn't angry. She was bored. And bored is colder than angry. Bored is a door already half open. Adrian was the other side of that door. Not special. Abs, quick grin, easy talk. Maybe that's all it takes when you're looking for a different kind of noise. Ryan began spending more time with her. Clara stepped to the sidelines. Ethan tried not to pick a side. Liam disappeared into neutrality, which is just a softer word for leaving. I told myself it was a phase. I told myself people get tired, people come back. The truth was simple. She wasn't tired, she was turning. I saw the turn, I kept driving straight. That part is on me. The night I walked out, I went home, turned on the shower, waited for the anger, like you wait for thunder after lightning. It didn't come. What came was quiet. A long, steady quiet, long enough to hear the water hit tile even and honest. I said out loud to the mirror, to the steam, to the person still standing there. Don't beg, don't explain, don't burn, build, mourning. I shut it all down, social media, muted group chats, old photos, not out of hate, out of hygiene. Windows that open into storms don't need to be open. I called an old professor, the one who once told me I had CEO energy. He laughed into the phone. Come by, he said, bring a notebook and your stubbornness. 5 a.m. became a promise I kept. The alarm cut through the dark. I got up. I ran slow circles around the block, breath in, breath out, shoes scuffing the pavement, not fast, faithful. Daylight was work. Evenings were cybersecurity classes. Weekends were for stacking small jobs. I said yes to everything. Optimizing Wi-Fi for a cafe, building a firewall for a tiny accounting office, cleaning backups for a nail salon that could not afford to lose a week's worth of bookings. One small gig led to an email. The email led to a call. The call led to a monthly retainer. I stacked them like Lego, not pretty yet, solid. In the garage at night, I wiped down bolts on the Civic shoulders, saw hands greasy, the fluorescent light, humming the same note over my head. I didn't abandon the car, I didn't abandon myself. I started sleeping like a person again, not like a person underwater. By month 2, my edges were cleaner, eyes steady, hair trimmed, 2 shirts that actually fit. Not to show off, but to respect the hours I had paid in advance. An email arrived from a company in a glass tower. They wanted a pitch. The lobby smelled like new wood. The elevator whispered to 12. Their logo glowed on a wall that interns probably took selfies with. In a bright conference room, the COO walked me through outages near misses, the kind of leaks that make boardrooms nervous. I opened my laptop, laid out a risk map. No scaremongering, no neon-colored panic, just clear, and enough. We shook hands. 3 months to start, they said. In the brushed steel of the elevator door, I saw my reflection. No crown, no cape. Just a person looking himself in the eye and not looking away first. Outside traffic sounded like applause someone was holding until the right moment. Photos started surfacing. Not mine, other people's, a ribbon cutting, a networking night, a charity 10K on a Saturday. So clear it felt new. I didn't post. The internet posted me anyway. My phone buzzed. Clara, hey, hope you're doing okay. You look good. Ryan, heard you launched a company. Respect. Liam, dude, your name came up in a client meeting. You're killing it. I didn't respond. The person they were texting wasn't here anymore. They left him at the bar. I buried him properly, with a clean gravestone, with his real name. Silence looks weak to loud people until the silence starts building something. A grey Sunday. Coffee warming the kitchen. A slide deck open on my screen. One call. Then another. Then another. 32 missed calls in 2 hours. Texts rolled in like smoke from a kitchen no one would admit was on fire. Sophie, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please, can we talk 5 minutes? Everything fell apart. He left. I messed up. I miss you. Ryan, yo. I was wrong. We all were. She told us stuff. We believed it. Clara, I was a coward. She's crying on my couch. Are you okay? I set the phone face down, poured more coffee, let the wind slip through the window, thought about what to say. If I said anything at all. Not to hurt, to be clear. That night, Sophie sent a long message. It read like a confession without a church to sit in. I thought I wanted exciting. I got fake. Adrian left. I'm broke. I'm scared. I miss you. I miss who I was with you. That last line. It landed, not because it flattered me, because it was finally honest. You didn't just lose me, I thought. You lost the version of yourself you could be when you were with someone who believed in you. I typed slowly. No fire, just light. You didn't just choose someone else. You made a show of humiliating me. When I walked away, I didn't just leave the relationship. I left the version of me that believed I wasn't enough. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm done. Take care. I sent it. Blocked the number. Put the phone down. Slept like a person with both hands open. The next day at noon, I went to the grocery store. Produce, milk, cereal, a cart that squeaked every third turn like it needed attention more than I did. A small voice behind me, soft, unsure. I turned. Sophie, no warm bar lights, no filter, just tired eyes and chapped lips. We stood half an aisle apart. She opened her mouth. I lifted a hand, a small wave. Hi. She swallowed whatever speech she had built on the drive over. I glanced at my basket, glanced at the checkout line and pushed my cart. Not fast, not slow. Some doors don't slam. They click shut like a seat belt. In the parking lot, sunlight lay across the hood of my car. I loaded bags, turned the key. An old song found the radio. Some stories end with a breath, not a shout. I drove toward a small lake outside the city. Long roads, thinned out traffic. Dry grass smelling like last summer. A cafe sat by the water, a handwritten menu in the window. The owner, an older man with hair the color of smoke, asked what I did. I told him about the company, the stack of projects, the way the days ran together, and I didn't mind. He nodded like he was marking a page. When you're busy building something that lasts, he said, you run out of time to break yourself over small things. Truth wears simple clothes. I drank my coffee and felt it settle in a place that wasn't just my stomach. Back home, an email waited. A bigger company. Long-term contract, long enough to hire, to plan, to exhale. I typed, I'm ready. Let's begin. That night, I stood on my balcony and watched the city blink like a patient galaxy. The phone sat quiet on the table. No ringing, no buzzing. I liked it like that. If anyone was still regretting anything somewhere, if anyone was practicing sorry at the bottom of a glass, that was their weather, not mine. Life doesn't wait for people to recognize your value. Life starts when you decide to move. Later, I called my professor, told him about the contract. He laughed. Celebrate. I said, tomorrow I'm buying running shoes. Good, he said. Celebrate with things that help you go farther. After the call, I opened the closet and looked at the pair that had carried me through the last 2 months. Frayed laces. Tired soles. I remembered the first morning after the bar. How heavy my legs felt. How light the air felt after the first mile finally ended. I tied my shoes and stepped outside. The streetlights breathed their quiet gold. My footsteps tapped a metronome on the asphalt. Chest warm, breath steady. Someone asked me later, was it worth it, not clapping back, not posting screenshots, not setting everything on fire? I said yes, because what I got back wasn't a win in an argument. It was the peace you feel when you turn off the lights and the kind of sleep that pulls you under like a friendly tide. Revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's water. Slow. Patient. It carves an old mountain into a new road, one pass at a time. One day, you look back. The mountain isn't there anymore. The road is wide and bright. I put my hand on the steering wheel the next morning, just for a second, and saw every version of me at once. The kid at the bar, the man in the elevator, the runner passing under the last streetlight. They all stood inside me, nodded, and agreed to be one person. Work grew quietly. We signed the long contract. I hired one person, then two. Clara sent a note, not a text, an actual email that took effort. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "I knew better. I didn't do better." I wrote back, "Thank you. Take care." Ethan asked for a coffee to talk about a small project he was stuck on. We sat in a place with plants in the windows. He told me he froze the night at the bar. I told him I froze too, just in a different way. He left with a list. I left with air in my chest that felt honest. Liam never reached out. That's okay. Silence is a kind of answer. A month later, I saw Ryan across a lobby after a meeting. He looked ready to apologize and not ready to mean it. I gave him a nod that said, "You don't owe me a scene." He nodded back, grateful for the terms. We both walked. Sometimes closure is a truce you sign without sitting down. Sophie posted less. Then not at all. I didn't check, but the internet has a way of delivering what you didn't order. A photo popped up in a tag I didn't ask for. She was at a party, back of the frame, smile that couldn't find its way to the eyes. On another day, outside a grocery store, she was helping Clara carry a box to a car. I looked once, and then I put the phone down. There's a difference between moving on and circling the same block. I started sleeping with the window cracked open. I liked the way the city sounded when it wasn't trying to impress anyone. I liked the sound of my own breath in a room I didn't need to prove myself to. In the morning, I'd run, then write a list, then keep it. Eat well enough. Drink water before coffee. Text my mother back within the hour. Buy a plant I had a real chance of not killing. Small things that added up looked like a life that didn't leak. People say time heals. I don't think time has hands. I think time offers a room. You choose what you do in it. I chose to build. The Civic finally started on a Tuesday that smelled like rain. The engine turned over and caught a voice clearing its throat. I laughed, a short surprised sound alone in the garage, and I let the headlights paint a bright rectangle on the back wall. I drove it that evening out past the last bus stop, past the place where the city shrugs and becomes fields. I rolled down the window and let the air cut trails across my arms. There was a moment where I wanted to call someone to say, "It started. It runs. You were wrong about me." But wanting to call is not the same as needing to. I drove instead. I let the road confirm what I already knew. On a quiet Friday, I got an invitation to speak to a class at the old campus. The professor introduced me like I had always been this person. I laughed and told the students the truth. I told them some of the best decisions you make won't feel like victories. They'll feel like leaving a room you helped decorate. I told them discipline is a kind of tenderness you give your future self. That you don't have to impress the people who clap at the wrong time. That you can be the kind of quiet that builds bridges, not the kind that hides under them. Sophie emailed once more. A paragraph. No romance. No roses taped to the front. "I'm in therapy," she wrote. "I'm learning why I needed the noise, why I hurt you in public, why I laughed. I don't expect an answer. I hope you're well." I read it. I wished her steadiness. I archived the message. You can love who someone was without inviting who they are now to dinner. That's not cruelty, that's architecture. I bought the running shoes, broke them in on a Sunday, that tasted like sun on the tongue. I ran past the bar with the wrong laughter, the bar that made a stage out of a table and a person. The neon sign flickered in daylight. I didn't feel rage, I felt distance. The good kind, the kind measured in new habits and new friends and new conversations that don't make your shoulders creep up toward your ears. Clara and I talk sometimes about work, about a book she thinks I'd like, about a recipe that uses more garlic than is appropriate and still not enough. Ethan sends updates when a solution we sketched out together actually holds in the wild. I go to bed before midnight more nights than not. I wake up before my alarm on purpose. I keep promises to myself like they're fragile and made of glass and important enough to carry with both hands. When I think of Sophie now, I don't think of the spoon against the glass. I don't think of the half smile, the half smirk. I think of a girl in a coffee shop reading a book that smelled like dust and underlines. I think of a head on my shoulder on a road where the lights were green in a row. I think of a version of both of us that made sense then. You can honor that without living there. Sometimes I park by the lake after work. The wind rolls off the water and smooths out the day. The cafe owner nods at me like I'm a regular in a story that doesn't need plot twists every 5 minutes. He asks how it's going. I say, "Steady?" He says, "Good. We don't perform for each other. We don't need to. That's the whole point." I go home. I turn on the kitchen light. I boil water. I set the kettle down. I open my laptop. I finish a guide for a client. I save it. I close the lid. I breathe out. I smile. Tomorrow I'll wake up early. I'll run. I'll work. I'll live. Not to be better than anyone else, just better than I was yesterday. And if I love again, it will start from fullness, not from a hole I'm asking someone to fill. The city blinks outside my window. I tell myself, keep going. And I turn off the light and I let the quiet fall like a thin blanket. And I sleep. I woke before the alarm the next morning. The kind of wake that arrives gentle like a hand on the shoulder, not the kind that yanks you by the collar. The window was blue with early light. I could hear the city stretching. Trucks in the distance, a bird insisting on a song it hadn't perfected, a door down the hall closing without hurry. I lay there for a minute, let my breathing find a steady lane, and said, out loud, keep going. At the office, the small one with 2 desks and a plant that was somehow still alive, I answered emails I used to dread. I didn't dread them now. They were puzzles, and I had time. Mara, the new hire, sat opposite me, knuckles tucked under her chin, eyes moving fast over a config file. She was fresh out of school smart, a little scared to be smart in front of people. It's okay to say when you see it, I told her. It's also okay to say when you don't. She nodded, pointed at a line. There, she said, that's where it starts to leak. I grinned. Good, let's fix the leak. Then let's write down how we knew. At lunch I walked the long way to a deli that puts too much mustard on everything, and I ordered too much mustard on purpose. On the way back I passed a storefront window and caught a slant of myself I didn't recognize from last year. Not better, just more mine. Shoulders not trying to impress the street, eyes not trying to measure every person walking the other way. I lifted a hand at my reflection like 2 neighbors saying hello across a fence. Then I went back to work. Midweek, a client call came in after hours, a small breach, nothing catastrophic but messy enough to scare the right people. Can you come now? The COO asked, half a question, half a plea. Yes, I said, and breathe. We'll keep the right circles tight. I drove over with a calm that felt borrowed from a future version of me. In a too bright conference room, we traced the path out loud. Whiteboard, wires, coffee that tasted like cardboard, and relief. At 2 a.m., the red dots on my screen softened to yellow, then to green. The COO leaned on the table with both hands. I haven't slept in 2 days, she said. and for the first time I think I might. I told her the truth. You will? Because you're going to fix the process after we fix the problem. She laughed a short, honest laugh, the kind that has room for tomorrow. On the way home, I took a street I hadn't taken in years. It passed a tiny park where I once sat with Sophie on a cold afternoon in February. We ate hot pretzels off a paper plate, and she told me stories about her grandfather, how he could whittle a flute from a branch, how he swore coffee tasted better in chipped mugs. I had forgotten that day. Not because it was small, but because it was gentle. Not every memory surviving the flood is a loud one. Some survive because they know how to float. The Civic started on the first try. The engine purred, proud of itself, and I drove it around the block like I was walking an old dog that still liked to chase the occasional leaf. A neighbour waved. I waved back. We didn't know each other's names. It still counted. There was a moment that week when a box arrived at the office with no return address. Inside my hoodie, the grey one, folded in a way that said care and apology, and a book the bell jar, the margins thick with someone's handwriting. No note. I knew the handwriting. I put the hoodie in the bottom drawer of my desk, not like a trophy, more like a photograph you don't put on a wall, but you don't throw away either. I opened the book to a random page. She had underlined a sentence and written, I was younger when I loved this, and I wanted louder things. I closed the book, exhaled, and put it back in the box. I didn't need to read the rest to know what it said. Some letters are made of ink. Some letters are made of silence and cardboard. My mother called that Sunday. She has a way of calling exactly when I'm about to make coffee, and not a second later. You sound taller, she said. And I laughed. I think I am, I told her, but only on the inside. She asked about work, about the car, about whether I was remembering to eat food that had a colour not found on a chip bag. Then gently about Sophie. I told her we were done in the way that meant done. She hummed the sound she uses for acceptance and love. You always built your own toys, she said, even when you were a kid. You never liked the ones that came finished. I still don't, I said. Good, she said, then keep building. That night I ran late, later than usual, the city different at 11 than it is at 7. Fewer cars, more shadows. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, it feels like a theatre waiting for the curtain. I kept an easy pace, nothing that bragged, nothing that begged. At mile 3 I fell in step with an older runner, white hair, steady cadence shoes, older than mine but somehow more certain. Pace, he said between breaths, is what you give yourself, not what the street takes. I nodded, filed it away in the drawer labelled, Say this to yourself when you forget. The next week, Clara asked to return something of mine. A Polaroid, from a trip the group took years ago, the one where we got lost and ended up at a diner with a sign that simply said, Eggs. We met in daylight outside where apologies fit better. She held the photo like a small animal. I didn't stand up for you. She said I told myself I was neutral. That's just a word people use when they want a clean shirt and a dirty conscience. I told her I didn't need her to be perfect, then I needed her to be present. She nodded. I can do present, she said. I'm practicing. I put the photo in my pocket, not to keep the past, but to keep the lesson. Work grew a spine and then a heartbeat. We took on a pro bono project for a community clinic. Their system was a patchwork quilt that had kept people healthy by sheer force of will. Mara led the audit hands, steady voice steadier. She presented to their board like she was telling a true story to friends around a table. Afterward, a nurse hugged her like she had just learned her own name. On the drive back, Mara stared out the window, quiet in the way people are when the thing they're good at finally introduces itself. "You did good," I said. She wiped her eyes and laughed at herself. "I did," she said, "and I want to do it again." "We will," I said, "and write down how you knew." I spoke to a class at the old campus on a Friday that smelled like pencil shavings and new notebooks. The professor introduced me with adjectives I didn't deserve, and I corrected him with nouns I did. After the talk, a student with a backpack that belonged to 3 different decades asked, "How do you stop caring what people think?" I told him, "You don't. You shrink the audience, you invite fewer people to the show, you make sure the ones in the front row know the real lines." He nodded like he'd been waiting for permission to do that since middle school. On my way out of the building, I saw Ryan in the lobby. He was holding a coffee he didn't seem intent on drinking. He opened his mouth, closed. It tried again. I rehearsed a speech. He said it sounded better in my car. I told him he could keep it in the car, or he could trade it for a sentence that belonged on a sidewalk. He took a breath. "I was cruel," he said, "and proud of it. That's a kind of sickness." I stared at the floor tiles until my jaw unclenched. "Thank you," I said, "for saying it like that." He nodded. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just wanted to return something I took. Your dignity, even if it's just by naming what I did." We stood there like 2 men waiting for an elevator that might never come. Then we each chose the stairs. Sometimes that's the better way down. Sophie sent one more email, shorter than the last. "I found your hoodie," she wrote. "I washed it twice. I put the book in too. Thank you for being kind in the places you could have been cruel." I replied with 2 sentences and a period that felt like a full stop. "I wish you steadiness," I wrote. "Take care of the version of you that tells the truth." She didn't answer. That was the answer. One evening, the clinic called to say their system had held through a citywide outage that took down half the neighborhood. Mara forwarded the note with 17 exclamation points and then edited it to 2. I laughed, wrote back, 17 was honest. Keep the 17. We ordered noodles, the kind that arrive in paper boxes that look like origami. We ate at our desks with the windows open, the office smelling like garlic and progress. I drove the Civic out to the lake again when the weather decided to be kind for a whole day. The cafe owner saw me coming and poured my coffee before I asked. "Steady," he said like it was my name. "Steady," I said back. I told him about the runner with the white hair, about the line he'd given me. The owner nodded. "People who go far," he said, "collect sentences like tools. You've got a good toolbox." I told him I had room for a few more. He pointed toward the water. "Here's one," he said, "don't confuse calm with small." On the long road back, the sky did that thing where it forgets what color it wants to be and tries 3 at once. I turned the radio down to hear the tires sing. I thought about sending a message I would never send. "Dear Sophie," I would have written, "I am not the person you stood up in front of. He is safe now. He lives in a house I built inside my chest. The locks are good. The windows are high. You cannot get in. Thank you for teaching me how to use a hammer with the hand that used to wave hello. I didn't write it. I let the car say it for me, mile after mile. Another contract came in, then another. I interviewed a candidate who had been laid off twice in 1 year and still managed to speak about her work like someone describing a trail they love. We hired her. Her name was Noor. On her first day, she brought a tiny plant in a clay pot and set it on her desk like a flag that said, "I intend to be here." I told Mara, "Let Noor teach you something you didn't expect." Mara nodded. She already did. She said she ties her hair back before she solves something. I think I will too. I laughed. Rituals matter. I said even the silly ones. On a Saturday, Clara texted a photo of a bookshelf. The bell jar sat in the middle, a small space around it, like a moat. I bought my own copy. She wrote no more borrowing stories that aren't mine. I sent a thumbs up and an exhale. Ethan sent a voice note that began with 3 false starts and ended with, I reached out to my ex to say I was sorry I ghosted a friend for her. He said thanks, that's all. It felt like cleaning a room I don't live in anymore. I told him that's still a room with his name on the lease. I slept with the window open and woke to rain rehearsing on the sill. In the dream I had right before waking, I was at the bar again. Not the bad part, the before part, the soft part where no one knows anything yet. I walked to the table, set down my keys and sat next to a version of myself with less light in his face. I didn't tell him what was coming. I told him to stretch his shoulders, to drink water, to remember that even when the room thinks it's a judge, it's just a room. He nodded the way a person does when they don't understand yet, but they trust the mouth the words came out of. A letter arrived from the clinic with signatures at the bottom and a coffee stain near the top. It thanked us for time we could have sold to someone shinier. It included a drawing from a kid who had waited without waiting because the system had not gone dark. The drawing was 2 boxes with lines between them. Underneath, in crooked letters, it said, "No broken today." I taped it above my desk where it could be the boss of my mood. Months moved, I did not count them. I counted miles, shoes, kettles boiled, lines of code that turned into fewer lines of code because we had finally learned what we didn't need. I counted nights I went to bed before midnight, and mornings I didn't have to forgive myself for forgetting who I wanted to be. I counted small bravery, a call made on time, a bill paid early, a boundary kept even when it would have been easier to break it and blame gravity. Ryan sent one last thing, a voicemail that began with a sigh and ended with the same sigh like bookends. I'm learning, he said, to be the guy who apologizes before the car ride. I wish I had been him that night. I am trying to be him for the next night. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. Sometimes the good thing is to let a man practice without turning it into a duet. The city changed seasons like a person changes shirts, with a quick shrug and a new smell. I passed the bar on a bright afternoon when the sign looked less dramatic. The door was open to air the place out. A song I used to like leaked onto the sidewalk and didn't ruin anything. I kept walking. My feet knew the way home without directions. At home, I opened a drawer and took out the hoodie, the grey one, held it for a second, then folded it tighter and put it back, not erasing, not displaying, just placing. I boiled water. I poured it slowly. I leaned on the counter and listened to the kettle stop talking. I smiled at nothing in particular. There are people who will say this is a simple story. A man is betrayed. A man rebuilds. They will miss the apartments inside that sentence, the rooms you have to furnish, the bulbs you have to replace, the hallways you have to sweep because no one else will. It is not a simple story. It is a house, and I live in it, and I like the view. If I love again, it will be because I have room, real room, not the kind you make by shoving boxes against a wall. It will be because my days are not auditioning for anyone's applause. It will be because quiet is not a punishment anymore. It is a piece of furniture I chose on purpose. It will be because I can hear my own footsteps when I walk from the kitchen to the door, and they sound like a person I would invite back in. Tonight I will set my shoes by the door, not because I plan to run at dawn, but because I like promising myself something and keeping it. I will put my phone face down, and not as a performance. I will set an alarm and wake up before it and let it ring once anyway, so it can be proud of itself, so it can feel useful. I will tell the part of me that is still 11, still trying to sit at the right table, that there is no right table. There is only the one you set and who you set it for. I will turn off the light. I will let the quiet fall across the room like a careful blanket. I will sleep, not because I am tired of the day, but because I am ready for the next one. And in the space between those two truths, I will rest. And in the morning, I will keep going.